Okay, we're going to go to flip-flops. So we've talked about a latch, which is a bistable memory device. Sure. With two possible states? Great. Latch is what's called level sensitive triggering, aka there's no clock. Hey, we haven't talked about a clock yet. We have also not talked about why we need a clock yet, because I haven't gotten to the point or the explanation of why clocks are important. We will get to why clocks are important, but I think all of us understand that your processor runs with a clock. So for now, a flip-flop is how you're going to store memory with a clock. And please just accept that as the explanation for now. In probably a month, you will thoroughly understand why we use clocks. But until then, we need to have a memory device that utilizes the clock, or works with the clock. So when they say level sensitive triggering, that means when the C levels out. When C levels out, then the device triggers to either to set or reset. In an edge triggered, that means there's going to be another line coming in that represents the clock, and only when the clock goes up does the change commit. So think of it as the latch happens whenever you tell it to, the flip-flop happens when the clock cycles. All right, so clock signals. Luckily, a clock signal is very simple. It goes up and down at a consistent rate. Is that true? No, but we're just going to assume it's true because it's so close that it's not going to really matter. So we're just going to say it goes up and down for everything, for every certain amount of time. If it's at 1 gigahertz, that means it goes up and down, up and then back down, so an entire clock. It does that 1 billionth of a second, and so it does a billion of them per every second, or in other words, a clock cycle is 1 nanosecond. Anyone know how much distance light travels in 1 nanosecond? Anyone want to take a guess? Let's do that. Take a guess. Oh, I see. Using your phone, are you?
Oh,
cheating. Oh, you're doing
it. I think it's got light speed in there somewhere, but I don't remember.
That's what I say.
I think that's how
on
many
top of
per
your
second
head.
it is.
The calculator. It's not really cheating.
It's like 2 million.
Yes?
Is it a foot?
A foot, it's just under a foot. So when you have a 1 gigahertz clock, light can travel just under a foot. It's about just over 11 inches. And since electricity is bounded by the speed of light, it goes slower than a foot. That means your electric flow through your circuit can only move at most 11 inches. And if you're at 3 gigahertz, then it's 1/3 of a foot, or less, just under 4 inches. Which you may think is a lot, but when you have giant pathways running around, that adds up very quickly. But anyways, here's a clock. It cycles. Modern chips run over to 3.2. You can tell that this slide is old because we have good old DDR4. Yeah, if you just took out the 2 zeros, that'd be good. All right. Higher frequencies does not mean faster machines, and we will get to that. What's that?
It doesn't? Doesn't it just like double every time?
The door is right now. We'll get to more of that in a bit. All right, so we're going to now have a positive edge triggered D flip-flop. Ooh, that's a mouthful. All right. Hold on a second here, guys. Let's look at this diagram. So the D flip-flop is what's inside of the blue box. You have a NOT right here. You have a D latch right here. D and control, Q and Q NOT. So this is the D latch. Then you have a controlled or a gated SR latch right here. And they're hooked up as shown. The proper terminology for this is definitely master-slave. Everyone laugh. Last time I had everyone just laugh at me for that. I don't know why. Whatever. The reason for that is that the D latch is the master, and the D latch drives or tells the slave latch, the controlled SR latch, what its value is going to be next. So, did they do a better picture next? There we go. So notice that the C it enables either the D latch or the SR latch, but not both. That's the first very important thing. C either enables the D latch or enables the SR latch. That means only one or the other is changing its value. It also means that one or the other is always changing its value, and the other is always holding its value. What's that?
And I just had like a realization of it. I just said, oh
Yeah, right. So one is changing, one is holding at all
yeah. That makes
times.
sense.
Right. And hopefully you'll see soon why that's called flip-flop type thing. All right. Let's see. So when C is 0, that means that the SR latch is holding its value. So the value coming out of the flip-flop is what was in the previous, before C changed. So it's just outputting it. But that means that the C going to the D, or to the D latch, so C0 makes it a 1, so the D latch, the master D latch, is going to change its value based on what the data value is. So at first, this value is going to take and store what's in the D latch. It's going to store it in the D latch. The SR latch is still going to output its previous value, which may or may not be the same as what the D latch was before. Now when C is 1, what's going to happen is C comes in here, it knots it, so the control line to the D latch is 0, which means that the D latch is going to hold its previous value. But then the SR latch control line is going to be 1, so then in that case the master latch is telling the slave latch what value it is going to have. You can change D all you want, but it doesn't do anything to the flip-flop because the D latch is currently controlled off. All right, so it's called positive triggered because when the C is rising, that means it's going from 0 to 1. When it was 0, the SR latch is not outputting anything, or I'm sorry, it's outputting its previous value. The D latch is holding what it needs to be set to, but while it goes from 0 to 1, it flips or flops, depending on which term you prefer, into the, let's see, at 1, the D latch holds its value and then tells the SR latch what value it now needs to become. The point of this is that D can be whatever it is, whatever it needs to be, and the D latch is going to ignore it until the control line comes back and changes again. All right, what's the control line in here? Yeah, C. I called it the control line, but there is a far more descriptive term for it. D is the data, and instead of calling the control line, it's another C word.
Clock, isn't it?
It's the clock.
Yeah.
So the clock is now the control line, which means that the clock is going to determine when the latch holds a value and when the latch changes its value, or the flip-flop. So it's controlling when it's flipping and flopping. The point of that means that if you have a bunch of circuitry that's trying to set what this D is, and it keeps changing what value it is because it's trying to saturate and get down to the correct value, the flip-flop will ignore it until the clock flips, and then it'll take what the correct answer is. The point of that is that hopefully in the time of that clock cycle, D will finally go to the correct value, and then the latch will hold it. And then it can go back and change it as needed. Okay. Ooh. All right, hold on. Let's stop here. How are we doing? Because this might be a little confusing. So the symbol for here, edge-triggered clock symbol. They do a little caret thing right there to show on the positive edge does it flip or flop. Okay. Notice again, they took this whole box and put it into one box. All right, think about this. This is just abstracting it out. What does the positive edge trigger D flip-flop look like? Well, this turns into this, which contains a D latch and a gated SR latch. Well, what's a D latch? Well, you go back there and it's there's a circuit for it that includes a gated SR latch. Well, what's the SR latch? Well, we have another circuit with some NANDs that's composed of an S0 R0 latch. And what's that composed of? Well, we have the circuit for that, which is two NANDs next to each other. So there's a way to drill down and come back up. I am telling you this because your Verilog assignment will be to implement the SR latch, which I think you did, the gated SR latch, the D latch, and the D flip-flop. Please do not copy and paste your code. Use your previous modules, otherwise you're going to have a huge headache. There is a very low success rate for people who copy and paste in the code. You can do it. You can do it. It's just on the lower end. And that's not a challenge. That's just trying to make your life easier. Okay. So the point here, we're going to go over to, here's the clock. D might go up, but it's not going to change the values down here until the clock rises. So once the clock rises, then that means that the clock, let's see. Why is it nodding it here twice? Oh, that's the negative. So this is the negative edge triggered one. Yeah, well, that's amusing. All right. And that's when, because the D latch will hold this value, when it flips, it'll have the D latch, we'll send it over to the slave SR latch, and then that's why it's going to flip. And notice that even though D goes down, it's not going to do anything until the next rising of the edge, in which case D at this point was 0, and then it'll change. Notice that even though D went down, back up, and back down, the output of the flip-flop was the same because the clock cycle had not told it to change yet. So it had not told it to flip and flop. All right, so there's timings. I think that's about it for now. Oh, okay. One confusing thing is what is the initial value of Q? And we're going to talk about this, but you only need to worry about this when we get to the implementation of our processor, and I'll show you how to do it. What's the initial value of Q? Well, if you just have a circuit and you lie them down, Q could be anything. It could be 0, it could be 1, probably 0 because you haven't charged it up yet, but maybe it needs to be 1. What they do on processors is they have a reset line going to everything that when you hold reset, it manually sets everything to initial values. So your SR latch might become 0, which is probably what you want it to become. And so it starts off at 0, and there's a direct reset line coming in to do that. And you can go through the circuitry for that, but it's not that important right now. Just know that there is a reset line. All right, you can do negative as well. Okay. That's going to be it for